Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a kind of a US politics but also Ukraine war kind of hybrid video concerning the horrific shootings in Minnesota that took place yesterday at a church and associated school, children who are praying in church, being shot by someone who was clearly incredibly disturbed. And the connection to Russia, which is fascinating and not quite understood yet. In fact, the shooter was not quite understood. Goodness me. But we'll get on to that in a second. I don't really want to get into a big debate about gun violence per se, other than to say that the US has a problem and it's an outlier to a significant degree. And I was listening to Anna Kasparian last night on a live stream where she was saying, look, we can talk about gun control. We can talk about this. We can talk about thoughts and prayers. But nothing is working. Whether that is because gun control has not been actively instituted or just because work on mental health is not being carried out or whatever it is, you can certainly point at Congress as being completely ineffective. But things just haven't changed to the point where you look at a graph like this. The US has by far the highest child and teen firearm mortality rate among peer countries. And this is firearm mortality rates per 100,000 for children and teens aged 1 to 19. In the US, from 2021 figures, and peer countries in 2019. Now, okay, you could look at COVID as maybe having something to do with that. The two timings are, annoyingly separated, but you can find plenty of graphs that look something like this, where the difference is phenomenal. Like we have barely anyone that dies in the UK as a result of guns on a yearly basis, and the difference in statistics is just monumental. But the real point is, nothing's changing. Like, no solutions have been found, or if solutions have been found, they don't want to do anything about it. So this needs to change. And like hearing thoughts and prayers and the typical claptrap from politicians who know that because they're funded by the NRA or because of this or because of that, that they're not going to actually do anything that makes tangible difference. So they just give the whole thoughts and prayers things, including people like, Andy Ogles, who will give a Christmas Christmas card of this image of his entire family holding guns apart from the youngest one, and saying, hey, look at that, that's cool, this is us, this is who we are. Please join me in a commitment to those, to fire those like Representative Andy Ogles, who offer prayers while pushing a culture of gun violence that results in school shootings. So this guy that did the shooting, Robin Westman, born Robert Westman, was a troubled individual. And no doubt you're going to get accusations about him being X or Y, or her being X and Y, and trans being something to do with it. But, I would argue that if you're going to vilify the trans community, then he was also white, or she was also white. And why is that not a causal variable in the shooting, since most mass shootings appear to take place, be carried out by white people? So, why is that not a causal variable? Anyway, I don't really want to get into big debates about this, other than to say that there is no change. There has been no change. And in fact, there has been rolling back of legislation. So this is coming from NBC News. I don't know when this was, but Trump signs a bill revoking Obama-era gun checks for people with mental illnesses. I would say this guy has mental illnesses. I've flipped through a 20-minute video of him going through his journal, which is entirely in Russian Cyrillic alphabet. It's actually a transliteration of English words. So he's not a Russian native speaker, but he's certainly dabbling in the world of Russian influence here. And really that's where this video is going. But I just want to reiterate that nothing is changing in the United States. And it has to, if the United States is going to progress on this topic, on this issue. But going to the shooter, Robin Westman, the Minnesota shooter was thoroughly Russia-pilled, says John Jackson. Imagine the MAGA uproar if they were Ukraine adjacent, but not a peep because MAGA treats Russia like an ally. And I'm fascinated to see. So that this video is partly about looking at some of the evidence to connect this guy or this person or this girl with Russia, and then to ask, and then what? What happens? Like, is it fair for me to say, hang on, let's not vilify the trans community because this person appears to be trans, but actually we should vilify anyone with Russia connections in or within this kind of Ruski Mir, because look, this person has overt Russian connections. But actually, I think the Russian connection does appear to be far more connected to what they did and kind of what they stood for, and that's what we're going to have a look at. So Minnesota shooter Robin Westman had a VK account, which is a Russian social media account, where he followed Russian rappers under the name Bob Vyostmin. Another reason to ban all Russian music on streaming services, says this source. Now, here's the shooter, and here's that images from the VK account, which has a lot of reference to, I believe, Russian music and whatnot. Here we start seeing some of the images of the guns and this whole plethora of writing on the stocks, on the magazines, on the guns and whatnot. And this shows that Westman's thinking was all over the shop, like all over the shop. So some people are pigeonholing them as left-wing, some people as right-wing. Some people are blaming Democrats, some people are blaming Republicans. I'm actually going to say, I don't think the left-right spectrum does any favors to understanding what this person was about. This person was clearly disturbed, and there's plenty of information to bring us justifiably to that conclusion. But I'm not sure that saying they're left or right wing helps at all, or does a good job of explaining. So this shooter, who killed 2 children, wrote phrases in Russian like "kill yourself, help me, I'm a terrorist, I am terrorist, when will this end?" He also listened to Russian rap artists. His writings mix various ideological positions. I hate fascism, free Palestine, defend equality. If I carry out a racially motivated attack, it would be most likely against filthy Zionist Jews, though. So you got some left-wing ideology and some right-wing ideology. Westman killed themselves after this deadly assault in Minneapolis on a Catholic school and church there. Wrote much of their manifesto using Cyrillic script to spell out English words like Christmas concert, parking spot, and I'm faggot. His weapon magazines also bore messages including "for the children, kill Donald Trump," and 6 million wasn't enough. That's talking about the Holocaust not being enough. So alongside Russian phrases like vodka and REB, electronic warfare. So what is going on here? So Robert Westman, aka Robin Westman, drew a picture of themselves looking in the mirror and seeing a monster, which is actually possibly one of the most revealing aspects of what we can see. The writing is English using the Russian alphabet. Can anyone translate this? I got, what is it? What are you talking about? So this is a disturbed individual, and I think that should be front and center of understanding this person. Now, Robert Westman was not a Russian speaker, although I think he has been caught on camera speaking Russian. But most of the Russian words are misspelled, and his Russian diary is written in English, but simply replacing Latin characters with their Cyrillic equivalents. He's also never bothered to learn the Russian cursive script. That having said, this is a massive journal entirely written in Cyrillic script, and so this is someone who's gone to a huge effort to transliterate everything from English to Russian. This is someone that is deeply within the Russian world in some sense, As someone says, so not only was Robert Westman a racist, Russian-speaking fan of Columbine's shooting, he was also anti-Semitic. So it's just so difficult to work out what this person was. Like, fan of mass shootings, fan of Sandy Hook, Columbine, guns, certainly anti-Semitic, anti-Zionist. Is that from a real radical left-wing position? But then also, I don't know, just all over the shop. Now, there's a 20-minute video that has been released online by some people. I think this was taken off YouTube straight away by the FBI. But just to let you know that he or she, they, on this video, basically just turns page after page of the journal with some pictures in it as well. The journal is extensive, right? It's really extensive, page after page after page, with them whispering weird sentences and whatnot, page after page in Cyrillic, right? It's a huge effort to do that. And then at one point belches and then whispers weird things and then, goes on. I mean, this is really, really extensive. And then there's that image that we've already seen. There's also a list of this that looks like an image of the church, and then a list of the favorite bands, which I don't know that you can derive anything from that really. Just horrific and unhinged. Now, someone says you can't be both a Western Russophile and mentally stable, and I think that's a really good point. So the fact that this person is fully ensconced in the Russian world to some weird degree, I think shows already that they're not mentally stable. I mean, I would, if any of my friends were like well into Russian rap and well into the Russian world, I would be questioning their mental state and moral state, right? Knowing what Russia's doing around the world. So in my opinion, this person just prima facie cannot be, just from this, cannot be stable. You cannot be a stable person and write these torrents of whatever is written here, and it's going to take some time for people to translate this. Actually, I wonder whether Google Translate can do a job of that. But it's not in Russian, it's in English, but transliterated, so that could be an issue. But you don't do that if you're anywhere near. Well, you don't shoot people if you're stable, of course, and that's a main. Obviously, this person's unstable because they've shot a bunch of children. So trying to make sense of unstable people, therefore, I think can be dangerous. But trying to make sense of the Russian connection, like, this interests me in a very dark way. I mean, just trying to understand why there is this Russian connection and whether it played a part in Westman's horrific activities. As this source says, you can't be both a Western Russophile and mentally stable. Just look at what happened to Jordan Peterson, Steven Seagal, or Kanye West after they started showing admiration for Russia. And actually, that's a really good point. I think Russophiles in this sense, not in a kind of, I've always studied Russian culture and history, maybe before, Russia invaded Crimea or whatever. And I'm a Russophile in that sense. You could build a case for that, I guess. But any other sense, like, you have to really disengage from moral reasoning. In fact, I think you've got to be morally bankrupt. So you've got all these pictures of Russian writing on magazines and guns, and then you have like Z as well, the Russian Z and FSB. So, like, this is where I don't think you can be kind of left wing as I would understand. But again, you could go so far left that you're like super fans of communist Russia and therefore have a way into being a Russophile there. But it's just screwed up. Again, should I be trying to make sense of this? You've got an FSB patch, a freaking FSB patch. These guys are not good. So, like, full list of every phrase written on the weapons and magazines. So I've been seeing people pick and choose which phrases to show that were what was written on the Minneapolis shooter. To pick out, like, depending on the narrative they are trying to formulate. Sorry, the sentence doesn't quite parse well there, but the point is good. People will pick and choose who they want this shooter to be, because this shooter has all sorts of different kind of facets to their identity and all sorts of different things they've written on guns. Like, if you're going to put kill Donald Trump, then automatically this person is a left winger. But then if you're going to be anti-Semitic and then pro-Russia and have Z written on your guns, then, you know, where does that put you? So there's 122 phrases written on these guns. Here are images of them. So, you know, you can go and look at the individual pictures at your own leisure. After reviewing nearly everything I could, some words were difficult to decipher and translate from the Russian, it appears that the shooter was fascinated by what many would describe as internet culture. And and actually, for me, this is maybe one of the biggest components. So as brilliant as the internet is, you know, for someone like me, my job is completely dependent on the internet. And I use the internet, I believe, in a very productive fashion. But also, we've seen a drifting of young men into internet culture that's been incredibly damaging. Andrew Tate, I would say, like, the men voting. So we've looked at demographic shifts in voting in America, in the US, and seen that young men have drifted towards the right. So this is where left and right, I mean, it's a shortcut to some degree, but it's too simplistic. But the idea has been that actually young men have drifted to the right because they've got wrapped up in the algorithms and in these spiraling rabbit holes that send them in certain directions. And here you've probably got somebody who has been a victim to the internet, whilst also being unhinged, and then it's the question, rabbit, you know, the chicken and the egg. You know, is this person unhinged and then accesses the internet, or does the internet make them unhinged, or is it a little bit unhinged, internet a little bit unhinged? And that's why I talk about spiral. It's a spiral theory of going further and further into a particular place, whether it be the right wing or the left wing or this or that, or being unhinged. Will the internet facilitate you becoming more and more unhinged if you approach it from a position of being somewhat unhinged to begin with? So this person said they reference various infamous mass shooters, as well as hateful slogans and violent statements targeting LGBT plus people of colour, Jews, Muslims, political figures such as Donald Trump, Israel and other groups. So this is where the left-right doesn't really make much sense if you understand it in traditional kind of, well, you know, social justice, left-wing moral purity of yeah, like, we're going to be anti-racist, we're going to be anti-this, we're going to, you know, but then and supportive of sexual pluralism. But then this person who is trans, it appears, is also targeting these communities, people of colour, Jews, Muslims, political figures, LGBT plus, Donald Trump, Israel, other groups, all targeted. So, you know, take your pick. Complete list of 122 of them. So you got Anders Breivik, the guy that killed people in the Norwegian attacks. Some really good films on Netflix. You can find out about that. Was it July 22? It's a really good film. Brenton Forever, reference to the Christchurch shooter, and he was right wing, you know, racist. Okay, so if you are and same with Anders Breivik, right, by the way. So if you are commending these people, then to some degree you're going to be commending their political positioning, I would have thought. Unless it's just the killing part. I mean, just so weird. Like a phoenix, we rise from the ashes. FTW for the win, or F the world. 6 million Jews wasn't enough. Born to shit, falls to wipe. So 2019 meme. FD or FO, don't know what that means, such as life. Soul Pace, burn Israel, destroy Hayas, which assists refugees. Reference to the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. F everything that you stand for, suck on this, where is your God? A Russian profanity, literally meaning bitch. I'm the woker baby, why so queerious? Russian slightly misspelled, meaning kill yourself. Russian, I'm a nightmare, nuke India. So now nuking India, the big one. A fart, and then the N-word. Hate, kill yourself in Russian, kill Donald Trump, rip and tear for the children. Likely all sorts. Anyway, all of this, you can see, you can go and read it all. I'll just somewhat slowly scroll down there because there's 122 of them. And I think you just get a sense that this person has it in for everybody and themselves and has everything going on here. It's just everything going on, like Jew gas. That was on smoke grenades, I believe. It's just incredible. Yeah. So there you go. All that stuff written, including things like FSB, Heil Breivik and Heil Brenton. Again, hail those people. Those are two extreme right-wing mass murderers. So if you're hailing them, I don't know. Deep within the Russian world, though, to some degree, Jan Kiev says, a guy that just shot 20 people in the US loved the Russian world, deep in Russian propaganda, wearing an FSB patch, and with Z also written on the guns. So Olga Kudetska says, so let's take a look at some of the signs that Robin Westman left on the guns and equipment. Yes, there are a lot of Russian words. He not only wrote them, but also spoke them, some Russian while filming, and also gave some references to Russian memes. And then talking about these different Russian ones, hate, kill yourself, bitch, all the ones we've already heard. And then the Z sign, so on and so forth. And some weird, kind of unintelligible ones as well. So completely and utterly unhinged, but somewhat obsessed with Russia. And Turnbull, I think, sums it up. That's one of the best for me. So I understand the mass shooter was trans and a liberal, also a racist, hated Latinos, black people and Jews, and last but not least, also homophobic. Somebody's story is not adding up. So yeah, don't fall for the left wing, right wing. He's this, he's that. I think, or she, they are this, they are that. They are really, really confused, messed up, and all over the shop. And at heart, massively, massively unhinged. I mean, you can cherry pick things here. Not enough people to talk about the video of the shooter urging people to vote for a Republican House candidate. I met Brandon Herrera. We agreed on a lot of things. So y'all should vote for Herrera. F those kids. Democrats need to win back Congress, says this person. So this person's saying, let's use this person to say that, that let's associate them with the Republicans. And yet, actually...
brought to you by BlackRock and ExxonMobil. Sponsored by Pabst Blue Ribbon. Brandon Herrera for president. ExxonMobil. This message brought to you by BlackRock and ExxonMobil.
Yeah. Brandon Herrera for president. I mean,
sponsored by Pabst Blue Ribbon.
So don't really know what's going on there. Okay, so what else? Cenk Uygur here from the Young Turks, which is a progressive left-wing site, saying the shooter in Minneapolis was a trans neo-Nazi. That's a new one. And hated Trump. This is a category I didn't realise existed. Hates Israel and Muslims, then shoots up a church. So literally everyone. I mean, it might have even been on like atheist, and I'm an atheist, so, but it doesn't, not believing that God doesn't exist does nothing else. There's nothing for your morality particularly per se. You have to do an awful lot of philosophizing to get to any kind of moral realization or conclusion. And so, is that a determinant? I sincerely doubt it. But there's a whole maelstrom of determinants, I think, going on here. So this guy, hates Israel, hates Muslims, shoots up a Catholic church. Of all the psychopaths who become mass shooters or terrorists, this might be the strangest one. And and I totally agree with that, because, he is going to allow people to come to any conclusion they want to, because there's everything here. Someone mentions, Breivik on his gun, that right-wing political act attacked the Labour Party on an island off Norway, killing all of those people. Was it 77 of them. Cenk Uygur says, yes, this shooter also had an ode to the Christchurch shooter, who also targeted Muslims, but the Minneapolis shooter seems to have hated everyone. Mentally ill people who are violent don't think rationally. That's why this person hated Jews and Muslims, but shot up a church. Just unhinged. This is an interesting point that I almost wanted to bring in. I've got another video that I've been meaning to do for about 2-3 weeks, 4 weeks maybe, ever since the shooting of the was it the Minnesota lawmaker was killed and her husband, and then another lawmaker was injured and his wife were both injured. And that happened, and it was a crazy Christian nationalist Republican that did that. And it disappeared. And it disappeared within a week. No one's talking about it. Trump didn't even turn up to the funeral. It was a politically motivated assassination, successful assassination, as in someone died. 2 people died and others were injured, and yet it disappeared from the news. Why is that? Is that because the political party from which the killer came from, appeared to have come from, is controlling the narrative, and then suddenly that wasn't a thing? And then we had this weird situation, as you can see here, for Cat Turd, who completely disagree with a horrific online source. It says this, and actually there is something about this, like, what's going on here? So the guy that tried to shoot Donald Trump and shot his ear, like, how do we know more about Robin Westman in 13 minutes? Like within 24 hours, we know more about Robin Westman than we know about Thomas Crooks in 13 months. Like, the guy that tried to shoot Trump has again disappeared from public consciousness. Why do we not know about this guy? Are we only allowed to know about people if it's politically useful for whoever was targeted to shout about this person? So because this shooter was all of those different identities, and you can pick and choose, but let's say trans, right? Because this person was trans, then the right are going to pick on that element and then go to town and then associate this person with the left. And then the left are going to say, well, hang on, they were advocating for a Republican and had really pro extreme right wing views, and we'll forget about the left wing ones, and then go to town on. So because there's such confusion with this person will probably be in the news an awful lot longer and will be used as a tool by both sides. Whereas for some reason we heard nothing about Thomas Crooks after the attempted assassination of the president. But what is going on there? Somebody says maybe because Trump staged it. So you still got these theories that the whole Pennsylvania attack was staged. I think that's practically impossible. But something weird is going on there. But the end result was that, well, not the end result. The core to this video is that Russian connection. This person being ensconced in some iteration of Ruski Mir, writing like torrents and torrents of a journal in Cyrillic alphabet, takes an awful lot of effort, and shows that and if you like Russian rap and you're putting Z on your guns, what does this say about you? And the last thing I'll say is to go back to something I reported on some time ago, which is the appointment of this guy to the counter-terrorism, domestic terrorism. He was this young guy. Was he the guy that had a CV that he worked as a gardener or whatever? He was basically is the least qualified person for this kind of position, but this is what the Trump administration has been doing. So put him into a position where he should be in charge of rooting out people that are going to do this. Now, some people are saying this guy was posting publicly on forums that he was going to do this shooting. Like, what music shall I play? Blah, 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 blah. This guy was literally talking about his plans to shoot up this church for a month on the open internet. But FBI Director Kash Patel and Pam Bondi are too busy going after imaginary MS-13 Home Depot workers. If only they were doing their jobs instead. But that job is from this guy, and this guy wouldn't have been doing his job because A, he's woefully underqualified, and also concentrating on the wrong things. As much as I'd like to blame Patel and Bondi here, it's this guy's problem. Thomas Fugate III, a 22-year-old Trump intern, was appointed to lead counterterrorism threat prevention in the Department of Homeland Security. He gutted the department, firing 75% of the staff, suggesting domestic terror and domestic-born shooters weren't the problem and the department needed to focus on illegals. So his job was to go in, say, oh, we don't have a problem with homegrown terrorism and hate crime and people shooting up, even though all the data has been suggesting that they are the biggest threat. And the data has been suggesting that for ages now, for years. But because that doesn't fit with the Trumpian ideology, this guy comes in and then sacks everyone that is looking into that and everyone that would be able to stop someone like this from doing what they were doing. And then says, we need to concentrate on illegal immigrants. And then you get a shooting taking place, killing children. So this department coordinates cross-agencies tips, helps power online monitoring programs for proactively catching things like mass shootings before they happen. But given it's got basically no staff, I imagine they're drowning in a backlog and too busy focused on the president's made-up agenda, and so didn't catch the fact that the shooter was blatantly posting about his planned crimes online. This is why we hire qualified people for offices, not partisan loyalists. Today, Trump's loyalty pledge literally cost children their lives. Let me know what you think about all of this connection and why you think this was able to take place and whether there was anything that could be done about it. I mean, he bought all of his guns legally, or they bought all of their guns legally, and that's an issue, possibly to do with background checks. Can you easily stop a lone wolf that buys their guns legally and goes on to fulfill some kind of individual, I don't know, agenda in shooting people? Well, if they posted it publicly online, there should be tools to be able to identify such people. Take care. Speak to you soon, and spare a thought for the families of the children who were, and I don't want to make this a religious thing, but thoughts and prayers aren't good enough. Thoughts and prayers don't change rules, don't change laws, and don't find people before they're going to do this. Those children were praying when they were killed and injured. Thoughts and prayers, okay, I'm not gonna say don't do that, but if that's all you do, that's not good enough. If you're a lawmaker and all you do is thoughts and prayers, that's not good enough. You need more. You need action. And you need change. You desperately, desperately need change.